welcome back to another episode of Music Theory Mondays. Today we're going to be discussing, or rather doing a harmonic analysis of Beethoven's Ninth Symphony, also known as Ode to Joy. We're going to take a look at the third line of this B section of the song. It's a very simplified arrangement of the song. And I want to go through and discuss the chords used and why they're used and why it works. So it's kind of a harmonic roadmap. And this is one of the most interesting parts of the song. So I think this is a good opportunity to employ the use of key, chords within a key, chords outside of the key, secondary dominant chords, etc. So here we go. We're going to be looking at this first measure here. Now to figure out the chords, you essentially check out the root notes, the bass notes, whatever those letters happen to be. That's typically the root note of your chord. So here we have a G. So in measure 1, I'm just going to kind of duplicate the measures down here. Alright, in measure 1, we're dealing with a G, which is the 5 of the key of C. And I got ahead of myself because I realized I didn't tell you what key we're dealing in, but we have no sharps or flats in the key signature, therefore we are in the key of C, and we're doing the B section of this particular arrangement. So we're dealing with a G chord in the first measure, which is the 5 of C. The second measure is also a G chord, which is the 5 of C. The third measure contains two different chords. The first chord here is, once again, a G chord, 5 of C, alright? And then this next chord is a G sharp and an E. Now, it's not a G sharp chord, even though the root note or the bass note is a G sharp. It's actually an E major chord. The interval between the E and the G sharp happens to be a major interval. We're going to actually call this an E7, because that's technically what we're dealing with here. We're dealing with an E7, which is a dominant chord. However, it's not the dominant chord in the key of C. As you know, G is the 5 of C. So now we have to ask ourselves, what is an E7 doing in this song? All right? Whenever you see a dominant chord, you always have to ask yourself, what key does it belong to? And once you figure out that key, the chances are the next chord in succession will be its resolution point. So, if we take a look at the very last measure, we have an A in the bass and a C in the melody. You put the A and the C together, and you've got yourself an A minor. So we're going to write A minor. A minor is kind of serving multiple functions here. It's a resolution for the E7, right? Because if we write out the A minor scale, you will notice that in the first 5 notes you have the E, 7, which is the 5 to the A, the 1. Alright, so the A is functioning as the resolution point for the E7, but it's also the 6th chord in the key of C. Alright, and we're going to do the key of C here for you. There's your 6, there's your 1. So it's kind of functioning as two different things at the same time. We're going to call it a pivot chord. The next chord in line here is a D and an F sharp. Now there's no F sharp in the key of C, but a D and an F sharp essentially outlines a D major chord. And in this case, we're going to call it a D7 because the very next chord outlined by the single root note of G would happen to be G. So here's what we've got. I'm going to flip this over and rewrite this for you in summary. We go from a G chord to an E7, and then the E7 resolves to A minor. The A minor then leads to a D7, which then resolves itself to G. So within this 5-chord progression, you've got 2 secondary dominants. I'm going to put S and D for secondary dominant chords. The E7 resolves itself to A minor, and the D7 resolves itself to G. And what's really cool is that within that large progression, you also have a very common 2-5-1 progression built in at the end with the A minor, D7, and G. So there's a lot going on in this one very short line from Ode to Joy. I hope all that made sense. If anybody has any questions, please leave it in the comments below. Have a great day.